The Umbrella Academy Season 2 is now available for your viewing pleasure on Netflix, and this comes to us about a year and a half after the release of the first season. That first season drew in about 45 million viewers in its first month, and Netflix greenlit a second season in that 1 month later, which was awesome. I was very excited to see this season. I'm a fan of the comic books. I think these are really great characters, and the world around them created is fantastic. And I really liked the first season. I think the first season did a good job of setting up these characters, setting up this world. While it did have some issues here and there, I was pretty pleased with it. Although I do know a lot of people who weren't fully on board with it. Some people were not on board with the tone, some people were not on board with some of the material in it, which is fine. And I was excited to see where season 2 would go because of the way season 1 ended. Originally, I thought they would just follow the comic book through and through, and at the end of it, Vanya would get shot in the head and she would go in a bit of a coma, and then they would spend the longest time basically trying to make her recover, and they would write themselves into a corner eventually. They did not do that because she gets shot on the side, the apocalypse happens, and season 2 begins right there. The portal opens up and all the characters escape the apocalypse when the moon gets destroyed, and they land up in 1961, 1962, and 1963. And basically, number 5, played by Aidan Gallagher, figures out that the world is going to end again in 8 days. And there's no rhyme or reason as to why, because they're like, we stopped the apocalypse. Why is there another one happening? And so they're trying to figure out why, and hopefully in the process see if there's a way to get back to the timeline that they were originally from and restore everything to its natural settings without having another apocalyptic event take place. When it comes to sophomore seasons of comic book shows, there are very few of them that have, in my opinion, upped the ante from the first one in quality. In terms of plot, always. But like, it's very rare when you see a sophomore season of anything be better than its first season. In the case of Umbrella Academy, I hesitate to say it's just better because it's sort of a light year beyond season 1. This makes season 1 actually look pretty mediocre. And like I said, I already really liked season 1, and now watching this, I was thoroughly entertained. Not only was I thoroughly entertained, I was thoroughly impressed because they clearly took on some of the issues season 1 had, some of the tonal inconsistencies in particular, and said, yeah, we're gonna fix all this because this show is so much more consistent. In fact, I didn't have any major tonal issues with it at all. I didn't even have major pacing issues with it because every episode of this entire season is breakneck. I had no problems at any point like thinking, oh, this is too slow, oh, this is too melodramatic, oh, this is too monotonous, this needs to go, this needs to go, this needs to go. None of that, no feelings of that whatsoever were in this entire season. I watched the 10 hours of it pretty much in one straight flush. The direction is energetic, the writing, fantastic. All the performances, literally everyone, magnificent. You can tell these actors are having so much fun playing these characters. Even the villain characters, there's just a lot to glean from here. And I gotta give props to everybody in the cast involved. I'm not gonna name names specifically because honestly, everybody deserves the same level of commendation and all the praise that can be given to them. They've really upped the ante with this season, also with the action, because they clearly, like I said, that season 2, the moment it was greenlit and they saw how many people watched season 1, I'm sure Netflix was like, yep, we upped that budget because there are shots in this that could honestly, if it was a movie, it would make a short list for Best Visual Effects Oscars. Absolutely spectacular looking season through and through. The action is a lot better handled in this one. There's some really intense sequences. There's one scene in particular that's extremely nail biting. It's very similar to a scene in season 1, but in my opinion, it's done a lot better in season 2. And you'll know it when you get to that scene. Like they even use the musical cue from that scene in season 1. So just in case you don't figure it out the first time. Which again, the soundtrack is fantastic. It's a lot, it's a lot more polished, which is saying something because I thought again, season 1 soundtrack was really good. It's hard to talk about something raising the bar when you already really liked that first one, but this is one of the rare instances where I've seen a season 2 be this and so much better than its premiere season. Now, one thing I also have to give credit to is the way it handles commentary and themes. This has a lot more social commentary in it compared to the first season, and some of it is extremely brutal. And I was actually really amazed with how they handled it. They didn't choose the cliched, we're gonna throw it in your face approach. They did it in a way that was very relevant to the story, to the characters that inhabit the world, and it was very affecting. There was not a scene in it which felt like it was there because it's like, oh, by the way, did you get our message? We're trying to be social justice here. Nothing like that at all. And I always praise shows that can do that. I always like when there is a good use of commentary without being heavy-handed about it. And this show does that perfectly. There's themes about racism explored, sexism, LGBT themes, quite a lot of those actually. Don't want to go too much into spoilers, but they definitely did that quite a bit. And I was actually really happy about the way they handled those things. And they handled it in a very naturalistic manner. One thing that is starkly different, though, compared to the first season is its tone. Whereas the first season was a lot of fun and very exciting, it also had a very grim, serious tone to it throughout, and it was a lot slower in the process for a lot of people. In fact, it takes a long time for something to really start happening in season one. And so for a while, you're just sort of going through the motions in a couple of scenes because you're kind of waiting for it to get to the exciting stuff. Because this season is so consistently paced and there's something happening pretty much every moment, it puts a lot as a writer, like in terms of pressure, it puts a lot on a writer, like, oh, I gotta have something interesting going on at all times. And this show definitely has that, especially season two. But more importantly, it does it in a way that it never loses sight of its plot threads, its characters. All of them are well realized by the end. And again, it's just, I keep coming back to this. Like, it's so rare to see a superhero comic book show in its sophomore season be as big of an improvement as this one is. I mean, the other one I can think of is probably Iron Fist season 2, which was a massive improvement on season 1, but then season 1 was such a low bar to cross that I honestly wasn't surprised it happened. Like I said, I don't want to really go into spoilers, and I don't really want to talk about plot points in particular, just the premise, really. That's what I wanted to keep it to. Beyond that, you guys are watching the show anyway, and you guys should get to discover it for yourself. I just don't want to give too much plot away in the process. And it sets up a season 3 in a way that I'm very interested in seeing where it goes. You know, there obviously is a bigger story in place here, and that's going to make sense because, the comics are still going. There's a lot to, take from the source material just now too. But I'm excited to see where they go next. Although one character I do need to talk about is this character named Leela, played by Ritu Arya. She was fantastic in this. One of my favorite additions to this entire season was that character. Really, really great. Very funny. Great comedic timings. I was very impressed the way they handled it. And one other thing, since I'm still here, because there's so many positives. As for issues, I mean, I'm thinking about it really, they're very minor. I mean, yeah, there are some familiar beats from season 1 that are in this. Like, there's a scene I was mentioning, like, oh, the suite plays, it's the same thing. There's a couple of moments like that in season 2 where I was like, oh, this is exactly like that scene in season 1. This is exactly like that. This is like that. And there was some familiar moments like that were spread out throughout the entire season. Beyond that, I thoroughly loved Umbrella Academy season 2. I think it's phenomenally done. It's worth seeing. Check it out if you haven't started checking it out yet. It just dropped today. Take your time with it. There's no rush. But yeah, beyond that, I'm gonna give the Umbrella Academy season 2 an A. It's a step above season 1. I gave season 1 an A minus. But honestly, watching this season, I feel like that one deserves like a B or something. Like that one really dropped suddenly. This one is that much better. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. And I'll see you guys at the movies.